Okay. Hi, I'm Lauren Kennedy. Welcome to episode 99 of Art This Week. This week we speak with creative director of Marquand Books, Ed Marquand, about his window display at the downtown Neiman's. Now for Art This Week.
Hello and welcome to Art This Week. Today we're speaking with Ed Marquand, creative director and owner of Marquand Books, who was selected to create a window display at Neiman Marcus as part of the Dallas Art Fair. So my first question to you is, how did we actually have the great opportunity to have you come down here and curate a display for the Neiman Marcus windows?
Well, we spend a lot of time in Texas. We work with many Texas museums and many Dallas museums. And I was talking to Chris Byrne, the director of the Dallas Art Fair, and he and I were talking about all the publishing we do, and he just sprung on me, would you like to create a panel on art book publishing and make it up, do whatever you think is appropriate. So I thought about it, and I came up with this topic: how do books make art art? And he liked the idea, and I invited Allison Faust from the University of Texas Press to join me. And so we started bouncing ideas, and then he said, you know, I have this window in Neiman Marcus, and why don't you come up with an idea for that too? So I thought, okay, well, why not? And so I thought about it and came up with this idea of really honoring the museums we work with here and honoring the very important art publishing that they do. So the idea behind the window was really to create this little fantasy tableau for a man and a woman by themselves enjoying the pleasures of reading art books. And that's the basic concept.
So it's a little mini library, so to speak. What were the challenges of working and curating something in such an unusual space?
Well, my office is in Seattle, and I wasn't going to have a chance to see the space before the window went up. So doing it long distance was a little bit of a challenge, but everybody rose to the occasion, and the people at Neiman's were hugely helpful. I got a floor plan. I had some kind of rough pictures of the windows, and just went to work, and they came up with, I sketched out the furniture and the tableau, and then they propped it and they lit it and figured out how to make it all work. And then I contacted the museums who were represented here, and they sent sample books to the art fair, and so it was all done long distance. But I arrived yesterday and came to look at the window, and I'm very happy with the way that it came out. Our office prepared the mosaic of images behind the chairs, and that's kind of the fantasy, the dream of being in an art book and enjoying the pleasures of looking at art books.
Well, you mentioned the panel, and I'd really like to address the topic a little bit, because I think it's so fascinating about your concept of how books make art. And the panel conversation will be on Sunday at 11 a.m.
Right.
How do you feel that books make art?
Well, in some ways it's self-evident, but in other ways it's not. Art exists in an artist studio, and it can exist in stacks in museums, and it can hang on a wall. But there's often so much more meaning in a work of art than is ever evident to somebody just casually looking at it. And when smart writers and curators and critics and collectors talk about it and put it into context with other art, the experience of looking at that art becomes richer and richer and richer. And through that connection, either a direct connection with a work of art or really admiring a work of art in a book, it creates emotional connections and cultural connections. And so that's really the idea. What better vehicle than books to help make that emotional and cultural connection.
Well, I mean, in actuality, many people will only ever experience certain works of art in a book. They won't have the opportunity to travel to these locations to see things. So it has both a academic purpose for students, as well as, you know, that cultural connection, an emotional connection for many.
When I was a little boy, my mother had a very small art library, and I used to curl up with some of the books on Picasso or some of the books from the Museum of Modern Art or Michelangelo or whatever. And I started doing this long before I could read, but those images created an indelible impression and still carry emotional resonance. And even if the reproductions were small and not very good, and even if I haven't actually seen the original works, and perhaps in some cases I haven't even seen better reproductions of those artworks, they still carry meaning, and they have still informed my view of the world, my view of art, and my view of art history. And that's the sort of thing that an art book can do that nothing else can do. There are two examples that I will talk about on the talk on Sunday. Recently, the Nasher had an exhibition of the work of James McGee.
Yeah, beautiful exhibition.
James McGee is a very, very important artist. He's 65, he lives in El Paso. He's created this incredibly important piece of environmental art that's very urban, it's in the middle of nowhere, it's very personal, it's has deep emotional resonance. Very few people will ever get an opportunity to see it. This book really became the gateway to that piece. Well, we published the book, the exhibit opened, and I think that so many people are going to look at that book and be profoundly moved by the quality of this man's work. The only way that that could ever happen is through a book.
Yeah.
So right there we have a very good example that ties Texas, El Paso, the Nasher, and book. And the guy who really made it happen was Rick Bertel. And I can't imagine anybody more important in the Texas art world than Rick. But it was a mission of his. Tom Jenkins was the photographer. It was a very, very important book, but it will become important internationally. And without that book to be the nexus of all of these ambitions, I don't know that
it's really changed his career and his life in a way.
Indeed, indeed.
What about the Texas Artist Today book that we have so much excitement about, that Catherine Anspaugh has published with you? And what kind of, I'm particularly intrigued by the layout and how you guys make those kind of decisions to do something a little outside of the box.
Well, Catherine had been working on that project for many years before we knew anything about it, and it was the selection of artists had been made, much of the design work, virtually all of the photography had been in the works. But when we were introduced to her, we took a look at it and just found some very simple things that could be done that would make a very big book that they wanted to be an object as much as a conventional book. There were a few suggestions that we made. For example, originally they were going to open the book sideways, so it would be about this wide when it was open. And that's just not practical. And it could be difficult on the spine. The physics of the binding would be compromised. So we just made this simple suggestion: why don't we make it open this way, vertically, instead of horizontally? But then we also helped her figure out and maybe test her assumptions about the organization and the sequencing, selection of artwork, the quality of the images that we were getting, the distribution of the images, and really, I mean, we really have to hand it to her, because her and the team that she put together were really the creative force, and we came in really at an advisory capacity very late in the project. But it was a lot of fun, and we think that it's going to do all of the artists and contemporary art in Texas a lot of good because it exists.
I want to thank Ed for speaking with us. The display is up through April 10th, 2011. More information on Marquand Books can be found at marquand.com. For more information on the display, please follow a link in our show notes to Front Row. That's it for Art This Week. Thanks for watching.
I still got your Polaroid.